Do you want to be gaslit, silenced, condescended to, ignored, and then told you're the bad guy? Then come and join the Rift Trails server today, the best place for your blood pressure to pop like Mount Vesuvius. The Rift Trails is a Red M server that has been steeped in controversy since at least 2021. Banned players, naked moderators, a failed coup to wrestle the server back from the clutches of a madman, financial rule flipping, breaking Rockstar's TOS by advertising third-party content, and all the while preaching chill vibes. Never a dull moment in the world of horse games. If you want to see all of this madness, you can go watch the previous video. For now, we're gonna focus on the rest of this fiasco. But almost a month ago now, they were given the chance to openly discuss the issues in the Rift after I made a video openly discussing the problems. And in true Rift fashion, they shut it down. Firstly, by copyright striking my video, and secondly, silencing their players, muzzling them with manipulation and gaslighting, using therapy speak and underhanded tactics to shut players up and stop the conversation cold. They also weaponized words like boundaries and safe space to justify this censorship and created more frustration in an already seriously frustrated community. The focus of this video is going to be how the fallout was handled after my video was posted and then the reaction to my re-upload of the video. Hopefully by the end of the video I will have shown how poorly they handled it, but I do have some thoughts on the situation. We'll paint the whole thing in perhaps a slightly different light, but we'll see how it goes. But before we get into all of that, I'd like to thank everyone who helped out, who reached out, who gave me information, who even went so far as to offer to help me with legal fees. I can't really express my gratitude, but know that every comment and ounce of support is deeply appreciated. Thank you. And of course, thank you to my Ko-Fi supporters for being more awesome than Scarecrow. That's it. I want a figurine of this bastard. Let's get into it. Firstly, a brief overview of what's going on and where we are picking up the story. Chelsea Liz owns and runs the Rift Trails server, which is a Red M server that focuses on horses and a sandbox experience, and I quote, "At the Rift Trails, we bring horse lovers and gamers together in an immersive, inclusive Red M equestrian server and Red Dead Redemption Online PC trail experience. We prioritize kindness, diversity, and connection, creating a safe and welcoming space where everyone feels valued." Put a pin in that. A Red M server, for those wondering, is just a server that runs with Red Dead Redemption 2's assets and information. They are not official Red Dead Online servers, but are run by players and often modified, which is where the M comes in. Today we have hundreds of Red M servers we can choose from, letting players enjoy RDR2 in more unique ways. Running a Red M server is perfectly legal as long as you don't lock shit behind a paywall. Now, the Rift was special because it was actually the first Red M server that focused mainly on the horse experience in Red Dead Redemption 2. PC Gamer would even write an article about the Rift in 2022 calling it the kindest posse. But this kindness, as we will come to see, is a falsified smile only there to appease, not a genuine one. And for those wondering why equestrians are playing Red Dead Redemption 2, we horse gamers are a desperate bunch. And yes, we will play cowboy games to get our fix. It also helps that Josiah Trelawney is a delicious dandy man. Now, in January of this year, the Rift would make an announcement that they would be changing the rules for house ownerships in the Rift. Basically, you usually pay $30 once off to own a house in the server. They suddenly changed it to you now having to pay monthly. Even if you had already paid the $30, you would now be forced to pay the $5 monthly fee. They essentially turned a purchase into a rental. People were angry. They felt like the rug had been pulled out from under them, and many were unwilling to pay an extra $5 a month to keep homes they'd already paid for. The developers said that they needed that extra funding to keep the Rift going, but also they wanted to open retail space on the server for new players. Players asked for transparency about the funds, how much they were making and how it was being spent, because if the finances was one of the issues, then that should be an open discussion, because remember, this game is run solely on donations. But instead of posting numbers, they offered a vague explanation telling players how much it cost to run a server, but did not disclose their monthly earnings. Now, all of this happened in January. This lack of transparency frustrated players, and some started to reach out to me with other stories about the Rift. They told me about moderators silencing and banning players for speaking out, developers facing no consequences for toxic behavior, and even Chelsea using the Rift's Discord to promote energy drinks, which, by the way, violates Rockstar's terms of service by promoting external products for profit. No third-party advertising for Rockstar. In response to the backlash, Chelsea would end up making a video explaining how they use their finances and what it took to run a Red M server. I made a response video exposing their financial stonewalling and how poorly people were being treated in the server, but their reply was a copyright strike. An unfair copyright strike. I made a second video in which Abigail Pinehaven re-recorded the footage to ensure it could not be struck down again, and that video would prompt a response in the Rift Trails Discord server. And this is where we are picking up the story, because the way they handled this is fucking laughable. There are 4 ways that the Rift moderators handled the criticism. Bans, tickets, boundaries, gaslighting, and a lot of fucking emojis. We will be seeing each of these in action throughout the video, but we're starting with Chelsea's first announcement and response to the video to show how it evolved from there and where the frustration sort of started. It starts: given that the video and the creators community, along with former band members, have already contributed to ongoing harassment, we are taking the necessary steps to protect the privacy and well-being of our community and ourselves. Bullying and harassment is and never will be okay. We intentionally chose not to engage with the creator of the video beyond setting clear boundaries and providing a statement to clarify our stance. Despite this, the video was made without including any of our responses or acknowledging the efforts taken to disengage peacefully. When only one side of the story is presented, it creates a misleading narrative, and we want to be clear that we did not seek out or encourage this conflict. The response that they offered was this. I didn't show it because it was a repeat. The information in this post is basically exactly the same as the video Chelsea made and published. The video went into a lot more depth, so I omitted it because I didn't want to repeat myself. However, to be fair, I should have mentioned it at least, if only to show that I had reached out to them and that this was their entire statement. As for not acknowledging their efforts to disengage peacefully, I am unsure what this means, as the last interactions we had was this post, the video, and then the copyright strike. So I have no idea what they're talking about, because no one reached out to me in between these steps, but if I missed it or I'm misinterpreting, please let me know. When only one side of the story is presented, it creates a misleading narrative, and we want to be clear that we did not seek out or encourage conflict. But you unfairly copyright struck my video. I don't think we can have a more deliberate action to encourage conflict here, but I will leave this point for now, as this comes up again later during the question thread. Let's move on to the next point of this post. Concerns about funding and where the money goes. She addresses the fact that their Patreon follows the rules. However, the video never really stated that they didn't. What it did state was that she misunderstood how these rules worked. The person speaking right now is not Chelsea Liz. This is Abigail Pinehaven, who re-recorded the script for me after my video was copyright struck. So the person speaking is not Chelsea, it is Abigail Pinehaven. Let's move in.
Only a select few companies have permission to legally host RedM or 5M servers. Some businesses like Iceline offer game hosting for RedM, but these services aren't legal under Rockstar terms of service. Rockstar strictly prohibits unauthorized companies from making a profit off of their intellectual property, and hosting RedM servers for a fee directly violates that.
So no, she doesn't go against it, she just conveniently sidesteps the assertions that she made that Iceline, a server provider for RedM, is illegal, which is something she said, and it's not true. But she does not address this. She makes it sound like the video lies about the legality of her server, which it doesn't, because it never mentions it. The other problem is that although at first for me I was concerned about the legality, that was not the problem. The problem was that the people who had houses would lose them because you changed the rules after people had already paid $30. That was the problem, as the video stated. It's like you never watched it, to be honest, and to be clear, this is also never addressed in this response, nor in the question thread, but we'll get into that. Next point, energy drink fiasco, energy drink pin and representation. In very brief, Chelsea would make a ping about an energy drink in the Rift Discord. People weren't happy about it because they didn't want to be pinged for ads. It resulted in people asking them not to do that, and that had a ripple effect where people were banned because other issues had corrupt up, and there was pushback when they started raising these concerns. You can see all of this in the original video I made. Chelsea says here that the situation was misrepresented because no one was banned for being upset about a ping, which again is not what the video said. In the video I said that it snowballed, so the energy drink ad was a proverbial straw, and the fallout from that resulted in people getting banned. The energy drink ad was really a sort of catalyst to a deeper problem that had been brewing in the Rift, showing that not all of this was sunshine and roses, and that the mods did seem to have a very must-be positive mindset in the Rift. This would sort of be enforced by this post that would explain how harassment is wrong and that people had to be respectful of the mods and volunteers. Please watch the video. They continue that bans are issued after repeated violations of community guidelines, not over minor disagreements. They also say that they banned a few people last year whose actions actions disrupted the community and created a hostile environment for others. This is, as far as I could tell, not true. Most people affirmed that questions were asked and the ban hammer was slammed down with little preamble. According to testimonies from Discord users, over 50 people were banned in that short period of time, and many of them unfairly. Now, I do understand that this is a he said, she said situation, so let's rather put a pin in this as well and talk about this later. Addressing the misrepresentation of events. There has been misinformation about an old situation involving offensive content. To clarify, the issue was caused by a completely different Discord server. In the video, one of our staff members was falsely accused of intentionally using the KKK ped from the RDR2 files. This was not the case at all. I fixed this! Please watch the video. The real-world impact of misinformation and harassment. We understand that discussions about online communities can get heated and that people will have different opinions. However, it's important to recognize that regardless of intentions, content like this can have real-world consequences. Since this video was posted, members of our team and community have been subjected to targeted harassment across multiple platforms. In one particularly serious case, a staff member's old stalker resurfaced after learning where they could find them again. Situations like this go beyond online drama. They have the potential to put real people in harm's way. Okay, so stalking and harassment is awful and I don't condone it and I don't agree with it, and if it's happening, I am very sorry you are going through that. I hope it stops because that is terrible. However, I will say, if you are being stalked, a good way to avoid being found online is to avoid using names that are associated with the name the stalker knows. Many social media outlets allow you to have anonymous names, and that is a huge boon, especially for people who are being stalked, because stalkers don't stop. So I would suggest from my side, change your name on the Discord and avoid using names that are associated with your real name. If you or anyone you know is being stalked, I have left a few guides below on how to keep yourself safe online, because this is a huge problem in today's society. Please stay safe out there. But this is classic Darvo, using real trauma to invent blame. Darvo is deny, attack, reverse victim, and defender. According to the medical news today, Darvo is a tactic a person may use to deflect responsibility onto an individual they have abused. It is a form of manipulation a person may use to discredit a survivor's experience. Let's break down how this applies here. My video pointed out real issues: the lack of financial transparency, poor management leading to problematic situations, and favoritisms within the Rift. Instead of addressing these concerns and taking accountability, Chelsea denies the issues by focusing on what my video got wrong, like the energy drink thing, while ignoring the core problems I raised. That's the deny part. Then she attacks by claiming my video led to harassment and a stalker re-emerging, positioning herself and her team as victims. That's the attack and reverse victim and defender parts. By framing herself as the victim, she deflects attention from the issues I raised and avoids taking any responsibility. Oh boy. This Darvo tactic is a classic form of manipulation, and as we'll see in the question thread, it's just the beginning of how Chelsea and the Rift's moderators silence their community. Just briefly, the question thread was opened due to pressure. I don't think they really wanted to answer these questions, but the community sort of pushed them into it. As we can see by the general chat, players wanted answers and the mods kept avoiding giving them, telling them to make a ticket. But after the announcement was made, players just had more questions. So the question thread was started, I think in a way to just show that they did try. It was supposed to be a place to get factual answers, but it was also not a debate space. Now, what they're doing here is pulling the proverbial teeth before the players can have a chance to bite. The action speaks of a sort of no confidence in their own ability to argue their points, but this will become apparent as we move through the thread. There are a few points that they wanted to have cleared up. What was the finances? Why was my video struck down? Why didn't they let people who paid $30 keep their homes? Why were people banned? All of these questions are going to be systematically manipulated and gaslit into silence, and we're going to see this happen in real time. And all of this in the name of so-called chill vibes. Chill vibes are everywhere in this server. It is the mantra that players repeat over and over again when anyone says anything negative. We can see it here during the first fallout of the video. When it gets too negative, chill vibes are posted. This can also be seen in flooding, where they flood the general chat with dolphins or cats or other off-topic images to drown out the voices speaking out. This is a way of controlling the mood and narrative. They don't want you to think, they want you to fall in line. The flooding can also be called derailing. Derailing describes a pattern of behavior which shifts the focus of a conversation away from the original topic of discussion. It can be used by verbal abusers to cut off conversations or to control the conversation itself. Another term that sometimes goes alongside derailing is stonewalling. This is when the opposing party will simply stop engaging with the conversation. Although the Rift team does not entirely stop engaging, they do sometimes ignore players who raise concerns to prevent the space from becoming drama-focused. But this is called controlling the narrative, which we will get into in a moment. They further do so by forcing users to scroll and scroll and scroll to get to the topics that people want to discuss. It's an old tactic, and this can be used for good. You can use a derail for raids, for example. The problem is, as we can see here, these were not raids. These were 2 or 3 people bringing up a situation that they felt needed discussion. One of these users would get timed out twice and then eventually banned. The other would get banned for this comment, and then a bunch of other people would also get banned. We will dive into the banning a little more later, but the point here is the tight grip that they keep on their users. They desperately try to cut off the air supply of any sort of thought and force people to think happy thoughts, but this grip does not loosen here. They also control reactions. As we all know, in Discord you can leave reactions on comments or announcements, and the manipulation begins right where the mods deliberately spammed as many reactions as they could to avoid any negative ones. I am not kidding. There are thousands of people in this server, and this is the amount of response they got at the time. It's very little, because players aren't going to respond with something they don't agree with. It's very interesting and something to think about how desperate they are to prevent anyone from giving any sort of negative vibes, and also to control the narrative. Look, the emojis say, people are happy! So what does control the narrative mean? In a blog post, it is described as to control the narrative is to control how people think about you. You don't leave it up to them to form their own opinion, rather you interpret the facts for them. Now, according to the rest of this blog post, the Rift in particular uses a method called the drip strategy. We'll get into this a little later. It is a method that they specifically try to use to prevent people from really figuring out what's going on. But just keep in mind that they are trying to control how people perceive the situation and how people perceive them. This is done through very specific ways of speaking and very specific answers. But let's first look at how they do it, and then we'll explain how it works. Now, before you're allowed to post, they did line up a few ground rules for this thread. Ask a question in good faith, be respectful, 1 question per message, keep questions relevant specifically to what the announcement covered. This immediately shuts down any sort of further discussion about things outside of the announcement, meaning if my video brought up something the announcement doesn't mention, you can't talk about it. Another point of controlling the narrative and what people are allowed to talk about. They further say, allow time for responses. What they will not accept is bad faith arguments or loaded questions, personal attacks, harassment, spreading misinformation, or speculative motives. Instead of asking questions, no legal questions will be discussed. So, with all of that in mind, let's see how they handle the financial questions. To be clear, I have split these things into sections to make it easier to follow, but I am still keeping to the timeline. I'm just jumping to the questions that are relevant to the topic. However, at the end, I will show the entire narrative from top to bottom so that you can all see how it played out. So, financial. All of the questions that are about to be asked is about the change from the $30 to the $5 monthly. Players just want transparency about finances. Remember, all of these charts were cut off. They ask, will monthly expenses and income be released? Specifically numbers, not percentages. And the response is, we have shared what we can about incoming funds and expenses, also with specific numbers. We will not be sharing any more than that. What a great start! This is a great start to this conversation. There were no specific numbers shared about how much they make. Income. The number that they're more than likely talking about is the $500 or so they said it cost to run the server. This was not the income. This is what they claimed were the expenses with absolutely no context or proof at the time. Chelsea would sort of touch on this in the video, but I mean, she doesn't even give any great information here. The percentage the commentator is talking about were given to the players in Chelsea's original video. They offered nothing beyond percentages, no numbers to actually fill in the context. Again, I can put any number here and it won't change the percentages. But Tenacious T, I love that name by the way, continues. It's really disheartening to me that the Rift is unwilling to be transparent on the back-end finances that drive decisions and backlash. It's been months of this that changed policies and Patreon tiers. The expectation that players maintain positivity and good faith while our money is pocketed and used towards keeping the server afloat does not feel reciprocated if the Rift will not release numbers and a comprehensive picture of finances. I watched the re-uploaded video and agreed with the criticisms made, as well as the supportive message the creator ended on. I don't understand how calling out potential mismanagement can be classed as bullying. The moderator replies, "We understand that financial transparency is an important topic, and we've shared as much as we reasonably can regarding how Patreon funds are used. While we won't be releasing specific financial figures, we have been clear that all funds go directly towards server costs, maintenance, and improvements. The expectation has never been blind positivity, it has been constructive engagement and discussions. The issue at hand is not about raising concerns, but about the spread of misinformation and speculation, which has led to harassment of our team and community members." Okay, so just to rewind a little bit before I continue, we won't be releasing specific financial figures. In the previous comment, she claims that they did give those specific numbers. So they're contradicting themselves. And again, they didn't give the numbers. They have a number that didn't have any sort of proof next to it. But the point is that they say they released specific numbers. They didn't release specific numbers. Then they say, oh, we won't be releasing specific numbers. You see what I'm saying here? It's like they're contradicting themselves in two comments. Also, the point is not that it goes to the server. The point is, how much do they make that they can switch out the Patreon tiers whenever they feel like it? And when will they do it again? Alright, so moving on. Criticism is not bullying, but misrepresentation and outright falsehoods are not the same as valid critique. We remain committed to open, respectful dialogue while also ensuring that misinformation and targeted harassment have no place in this community. I'm sorry, I can't help doing that voice. It's the way that kind of pops into my head. Now, 2 points about this whole section is, firstly, if they don't want the spread of misinformation and speculation, then all they have to do is give the information. Show the charts without removing the numbers. It's that simple. Secondly, the has led to harassment of our team is yet another way to shift the focus away from the actual issue and turn themselves into the victim. Also, even easier, they can just make the Patreon live so that, people can see their finances on the Patreon. That's another option. Just a thought. Next question. One of the players asked about the finances. Can I ask why they won't share the finances? It seems like a fairly easy solution to a lot of concerns, and they would be right. If the Rift showed their finances, a lot of problems would immediately be sorted. The fact that they don't want to show it only creates further distrusts and more speculation and possibly more misinformation. The one thing they are trying to avoid, the moderator replies. Mostly because our income and expenses fluctuate a lot on a monthly basis, and it would add an unnecessary strain on us to include those figures monthly. Outside of that, we haven't seen anyone else share their specific finances. Nothing in our server is paid to win or paid to play. The only thing we require a monthly subscription for is custom housing and one fancy teleporter, neither of which are an integral part of our gameplay. Nobody has to donate/support/subscribe if they don't want to. Also, I wrote the script, but I'm realizing this just now. No one is saying that you need to share this every month. We're just asking you to share the last couple of months once. Again, even easier, just make the Patreon live. Okay, moving on with the script. Okay, what does it matter if your income fluctuates? Just show a few months and players can get an average of it. Hell, you can show a whole year if it's that bad. Saying that sharing finances is too hard is silly because it's literally a screenshot. You can make it 5 screenshots of 5 different months if it's that important for you to give context. This isn't about difficulty, it's about controlling the narrative. They don't want people to really know what's going on in their finances. It could very well be that they make $200 a month, not even nearly enough to run the server. If they showed that, everyone would be on their side and more people would donate because they want to see the Rift succeed. However, if it goes the other way and they make a lot of money every month, the change they made to the housing would be just a greedy move and they would lose faith from players and possibly donations. You know what? You guys tell me which one you think it is. They further press on the fact that they haven't seen anyone else share their specific finances. This is what they call an appeal to tradition fallacy. This is, and I quote, "An idea is claimed to be right because it is the way it was often done in the past. If we go by that logic, then really, why are women in the workforce? Joke? That was a joke. Basically, everyone else does it, so you can't tell us we have to do it another way, even though, in this case, a different way would be the best course of action. The last point here is that you don't have to donate if you don't want to. It's yet another deflection. It makes it possible for them to say later, it's your choice, not ours, which is a terrible way to treat customers. Players want to support you, and if you keep pretending like there isn't a problem, they might not want to do that anymore. Furthermore, the mods preach open dialogue but define open as a one-way interaction. Trust me, bro, but we'll never show the receipts. But let's try to answer the question, how much does the Rift make in a month? Well, a very fair user decided to tally it up. Here's how they figured it out. I tracked the Rift's Patreon income for roughly a year before I was banned. The only way I was able to do this was by looking at the number of people in the Discord server with each Patreon role, then matching that Discord role to the corresponding Patreon tier, they're named differently, and then tallying it all up. Of course, this isn't perfect, but it's more than we got from the Rift. In March of 2024, they possibly made around $2,000. A little bit more than $700 as they claimed. Now, this is just an estimate, but this does not include Ko-Fi or one-time donations. This is just what this person could see from the player roles. That's all these numbers are. Now, there are, of course, variables. Perhaps some of them got the role without paying, but we won't know until they show us. Perhaps there was a Patreon glitch, but we won't know until they show us. Perhaps it was aliens. We won't know until they show us. So this is all we've got. But if we go with the idea that this is true, where is the money going? Now, listen to me very carefully, Rift. No one cares if it's going into your pockets, but then you don't have the right to ask for more money by changing up the rules on housing, claiming that you need it. That's what the entire point is about. It's not about you making money, it's about you saying you need money when you don't. You get that? You get that? A few players would also press for any sort of answer on the financial situation, but the Rift would shut it down very quickly. Jax, for example, says if you're going to have a financial relationship with the community, you rely on them for money and they rely on you for the server. Transparency is expected and should not be asked for. Corgi would say, I know it's been said that Chelsea doesn't want to show what the server makes because it's directly attached to her, and because it fluctuates, it's hard to show quote-unquote consistency. However, I was wondering if the numbers could be shown from Patreon directly, as it would show no other income or money related to things affecting Chelsea directly and would only show the Rift itself. And one of the moderators would respond, thank you for your feedback. This is something that was brought up multiple times already, so we are hearing the need of the community to know more. We hear your concerns. No, you don't. We've said before we'll release once we've managed to make an LLC. For now, we're leaning towards not sharing any more than we already have on our finances until that time. But it's part of an ongoing talk within our staff. Jack says, simply put, from an unbiased angle, if you guys are unwilling to be financially transparent with the community that pays you, the Rift should not be taking money out of the community until you are able to provide exact Rift-related financial information. By not providing numerical finances coming from the server and the community that acts as an income source, you are creating an untrustworthy relationship. And Anne would respond, and I'd like to remind you of this and my message above replying to Corgi. And Jack says, yep, I see that. My point still stands. Until you guys become an LLC, you should not be taking money from a community that is asking for financial transparency, and you are currently unwilling to give it. Now, as we can see, as the conversation progresses, players start to push back more and more out of frustration, but we're going into the frustration later. For now, let's move on to the next question players were asking about. The Rift's weaponization of copyright. My video, a fair use critique, was struck within hours with no chance to respond. Why? Because boundaries. We're gonna hear this a lot. I re-uploaded it. Sarcastically. But players wanted to know, how was the copyright strike handled? Because there are a few choices you have to make during the process of a copyright strike. Firstly, you can either choose timestamps or entire video has to be taken down, and then you can also choose either give the creator a week to respond or get that shit down now. Spoiler, that did not give me a week. That's not very chill vibes, is it, Chelsea? Is it? Not very chill vibes at all. So, Lark asks, why was the video copyright struck when it was transformative and fell under fair use? And Anne would respond, we do believe we were within our rights to report it as such due to the way Chelsea's original content was being used in the video. It wasn't an attempt to silence someone or have the video removed, but a concern over our original content. I like just avoiding it Like, I wish I was this talented at avoiding everything in my life. I would be such a happy person. But I want to make it clear. I chopped the video up, put my own ramblings in between. I didn't use the entire video. Plus, I sped up Chelsea's footage. I am sorry to tell you this, but that's fair use according to YouTube's policy. You unfairly copyright struck a video. Anyway. So Lumi says the video Rattle made was under fair use. She transformed it, meaning it was a changed media, according to YouTube. She used it to point out concerns people have. I don't think it was used to steal content. That is ridiculous. I know this is for questions, but I will give my honest opinion that I also felt like copyright striking the video was to silence the discussion that has been going on. Hyena says, respectfully, that is not correct. I'm completely willing to believe it's a genuine mistake rather than assuming bad faith. But the way it comes off to others is that it's using a legal threat and a threat to a creator's livelihood to silence a discussion of an uncomfortable topic. If the content of the video is incorrect, you have the proof to say otherwise, and a community generally willing to extend you the benefit of the doubt. Fiery Nick says, I'm in agreement with Lumi and Hyena. I watched the video fully, and it wasn't using your content in a way that justified a copyright strike. I want to make it clear that the first response was, we do believe we were within our right to report it as such due to the way Chelsea's original content was being used in the video. They don't explain the why, they don't give an example, nor a direct reason, just we think we did the right thing, and that should be enough. That is not answering a question, that is avoiding the question. But this will happen again and again and again. How do you like the ride so far? But let's break this down. We were within our rights. Okay, then show proof that my video went against fair use. If my video really was copyright infringement, prove it. And furthermore, why didn't you give me a week to respond? You had that option. I gave you extended time, Chelsea. See? I have the proof. Here are the screens. Why didn't you do that for me? Next point. Her content does not align with our values. Yet you made a video mentioning me and praising my content. Okay then. And can you explain what values I don't align with? That would also be nice. We set boundaries. Take a shot every time I say boundary. You might die before the end of the video. We're gonna need a lot of whiskey! The Rift mods use boundaries to strangle conversation. Boundaries are supposed to be a way to ensure your mental well-being is kept in mind. However, people can abuse this. For example, in an article entitled Coercion in Disguise, Boundaries Used for Control, they state, by imposing strict boundaries on others' behavior or speech, individuals may seek to enforce conformity or silence dissent, manipulating the narrative to align with their perspectives or agendas. The Rift's boundaries aren't about safety, they're a rhetorical bunker. When users demand proof, boundary. When creators cite fair use, boundary. It's the ultimate Kafka trap. The more you ask, the more toxic they claim you are. You can't win. So you do see a bunch of other responses here, we will be getting into that, but here at the end we can see, after a lot of people have been asking about the financial situation, they put a little pin that says, we're not sure how much clearer we can be about our boundaries regarding copyright and finances. This is not aimed at anyone personally, but multiple people have continued asking questions after we've said we wouldn't be discussing this anymore at multiple times, and further questions regarding the boundaries you've set will be deleted. My boundary. And then Goblin says, hi, I wanted to ask about the false copyright strike was not mentioned. This was one of my main concerns because it can cost someone their entire channel and directly goes against YouTube's TOS. The Goblin is talking about the original announcement, and then Anne says, we have addressed this multiple times in this post. You can scroll up to look back. Yeah, you know what? Let's go look at that. No, nope, nuh-uh, no, don't see it. Huh, I don't think you have, Rift. I really don't think you fucking have answered the question multiple times. You've certainly mentioned it, but you haven't addressed it. Gaslighting isn't moderation, copyright abuse isn't protection, and boundaries, when they're only enforced against critics, that's tyranny in therapy speak. Now, before we do move on with the rest of the video, I want to kind of establish what is gaslighting. I use this word a lot, but I think we need to establish what it means within the context of this situation. In an article from Cleveland Clinic, they quote Dr. Childs: "Gaslighting is a form of emotional manipulation by someone to make you feel as if your feelings aren't valid or what you think is happening isn't really happening." The article further goes on to explain how to recognize it. There are a few points of interest here. Deflecting or countering arguments instead of working toward a solution. Minimizing a situation by trivializing or invalidating someone's feelings or concerns. Denying fault or shifting the blame onto others so that they're forced to feel responsible for the gaslighter's actions. Shaming or guilting someone into believing they did something wrong or that what they feel or think is inherently incorrect. These signs, in my opinion, are all over the place in this thread, and we're going to see more of it as we go on. If you do think that they're not gaslighting, please tell me down below why. But once again, let me try to answer the question. Did they do timestamps or did they do a full copyright strike? They did the latter, because my video is gone. Secondly, did they give me a week or did they ask for the video to be removed immediately? They asked for the latter. So yes, for everyone who asked, they went with the worst solution they could. Now, I do hop over a few comments and concerns people make throughout the conversation, and I will be touching on more of them later, but we can see a consistent pleading from the players for developers to just answer the questions honestly, to just give straight answers, and they refuse. But with that in mind, let's move on to the next topic that they don't want to talk about. Why were people banned? They would not answer this one, saying that they did not discuss bans openly, which is actually fair. You don't have to discuss bans, but they did not stop people from laughing about those banned individuals, as shown here. Now, to be clear, I got banned for violating harassment policy, which I'm not entirely sure how that works because I had not spoken in the Discord since these messages. So I was essentially, when you think about it, banned for making this video. So this explained, to me at least, what they considered harassment, anything that went against their word or did not agree with them directly. Now, after the video and before the second video, a few members would sort of start a voice chat in the Rift to discuss exactly what was going on. And most of the people in this voice chat were banned. One of them was actually banned for quote-unquote member poaching, which no one really knows what that means. The main other reasons that people were banned was for, and I quote, "You were banned from the Rift Trails. Reason: conspiring, drama mongering, and spreading falsehoods." Thank you, Carlbot. Carlbot is the only moderator in this entire Discord that is actually honest and transparent. At least he tells it the way it is. The last one was Carl Rose, one of the founding members. She got banned for fear-mongering and spreading falsehoods, like everyone else. I think they need to show us what they mean by this, and what this is supposed to entail. Because the thing is, the fact that they don't say anything means that anything that the person who was banned says is going to be put into question. They don't want you to have a solid answer to the situation. No. They want you to have doubt, because the doubt they can use. Like, maybe I'm just being very paranoid, and I'm a very paranoid person, but it's sort of the impression I'm getting. But I still think they need to show us why these people were banned. What were the comments that they made? What did they do that caused the ban? Because banning one of your founding members, why would you do that? Over a petty squabble, you banned one of your founding members. Theodore, the one that was banned first, got banned for this comment. They told the moderators they were treating their partners poorly because the moderators told their partner to open a ticket instead of directly contacting them. Theodore pointed it out, and they got banned. Isn't this the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? But someone actually does ask them about the partner situation. Let's see what they answer. Ryman asks, why when your partner approached you, they were told to open a ticket like you couldn't talk to them without it? And they respond, we discuss all partnerships in tickets for privacy reasons. The talk about our partnership with our partners is not suitable for public channels. We asked for a ticket so we can discuss it with the entire staff team, but we could also have asked for an email or a DM. Our main point was not discussing a partnership in public channels, as this is something about the relationship between both parties. Rimmon says, the partner asked you for a DM though, and replies, yes, they sent Chelsea a DM when she was unavailable, so she hadn't been able to answer yet. In the end, we also discussed their questions there. Like, no one in the team could have just DM'd this partner. Like, no one could have done that. So just to run this through again, the partner goes into the Rift server. She contacts Chelsea. Chelsea does not reply. She goes into the Discord to see if she can get someone else's attention to clear it up. They send their partner through the ticket system. And the reason they did that is because talking about the partnerships is not suitable for public channels. You could have just sent her a DM. Alright, the next thing that Renan kind of mentions is, why won't you just say straightforward that the whole video was reported instead of timestamps, if that's the case, and say instead that you don't feel comfortable addressing it. I personally don't mind if the video was reported instead of timestamps. Just saying it this way sounds like it is the truth, but you simply don't want to admit it for whatever reason. And Mercy replies, we aren't discussing the process of copyright claim because it is not our business, but rather the business of Chelsea and the creator of the video and their lawyers if it comes to such. It is a private matter. We believe the copyright claim is legit. If we misunderstood copyright and fair use, that is on us. We are doing the best we can with what we have, but none of us are lawyers, and getting legal advice does take time. I want to make this clear. This is the first time they ever mention that it is Chelsea's business. They're just adding another layer of avoidance. They also don't answer the question. They still won't admit that they copyright struck the entire video. If you're in the right, what does it matter? So Renan says, I understand the need to change custom housing rules and the need for a source of money. But as there were people that bought their custom houses in the old rules, why didn't you consider to let them keep these houses on the rules they bought them and just introduce the new system for anyone who would buy custom housing after? And Mercy replies that it would be unfair to grandfather in those players, and the new players that come in will then not be able to have a house. I want to be clear that the people who pay $30 also have to pay in-game currency taxes to keep the houses. If they fall behind, the house is then available again. But the person who asked the original question was not having it. I'm aware of community housing. Yeah, it may seem a bit unfair, but honestly, doesn't it seem unfair now to the people who bought the houses before? While it could seem a bit unfair to new people, they would know what they would buy anyway, and that would be purely their choice, which I feel wasn't a thing with players who bought it with the old rules. And then Chelsea replies, again, thank you for your feedback. The decision on how to deal with members who already had their custom housing in place before the new arrangements took us a long time. In the end, and after lengthy discussions, we decided on what seemed to be the fairest option for all players. And then that's where they say that we are just not talking about this anymore. And then this poor lovely person has to apologize because they feel like they overstepped a boundary. Like, it's, oh my god. Then Anne says, you're okay, we appreciate that your question and responses were genuine. We just felt the need to reassert that boundary, but that wasn't on you personally. So Pasadena kind of goes into this again, explaining that there was a better way to have handled this because it was just an awful way. They actually give a solution to how future partners could potentially be, handled. And then Mercy comes in with some delicious passive aggressiveness. Thank you for the feedback. And quickly, I'd like to say thank you all for respecting our boundaries, personal and as staff as a whole. The main reason we've set these boundaries is because we've already answered these questions at the best of our ability. And it feels like a bit we're running in circles now. You didn't answer any of the questions. And then Blix comes in and just says it. We are running in circles because you aren't really listening or answering properly. Players will still feel unheard, I'm afraid. Lots of inconsistencies and half-truths here, in my opinion. And then Mercy says, that's your opinion, like you just said, and you're allowed to have such. We're doing our best to protect our privacy and boundaries the way we feel is necessary. If you can't respect our boundaries, I respectfully ask that you don't engage in this conversation further. I want to remind everyone that the people talking in the server are either customers or potential customers. And the way that the moderators are handling them are like, gum stuck to the shoe or shit they're scraping off. Can you just please stop being annoying now? We have other things to do. It's such a frustrating thing to work through because you can see the frustration from the players. You can feel it in them. They want answers. They want to be understanding. They can't because the moderators are stonewalling them at every turn. But let's move on to the next topic, housing changes. Now, the first person asks, why was I charged for the Adler house when the rules state that only custom houses would be charged? The Adler house is an in-game house for those of you wondering, so why was it being paywalled? And the answer is, thank you for checking to make sure. So for this place, you don't need the maintenance tier, just the initial higher tier to get it all set up. If you've been subbed for a month, you can switch to a lower tier or stop the sub. Okay, so the problem people have with this is it feels like a bait and switch. They were told the only reason to pay would be for a custom house, but now other houses also require them to pay. The rules were not made clear, and this caused confusion. It also comes across, in my opinion, like they are changing or adding rules on the fly. Like, this point was not made clear. As Elzian says, I've just taken a look through the RE rules. I think this should be made clear. I cannot see anywhere in the rules it mentioning that mansions aren't subject to the same maintenance patron as custom Y maps. This can lead to crossed wires and frustration, as people will keep it thinking they need to keep it up the Patreon tier. The mods would finally admit that they have to change the rules to make it fit better, but the players still weren't happy, as stated by the brilliant Tenacious T. Why wasn't the custom housing payment change discussed / soft launched with the community before the announcement in early January? If the Rift knew it was going to struggle to stay afloat with policies as they were, why was it not brought to the community a long time ago? And then Anne replies, by saying they had community meetings, polls were run, a discussion forum was open so members could share their thoughts and concerns, a transition period longer than a month, and their goal was always to make decisions fair for the community. But Tenacious T was having none of it. They'd been in that meeting and the Rift had not discussed it, and no, they had not given proper feedback. Tenacious T further asks the Rift, will you be making changes and listen better to your community in the future? And the mods actually admit fault. Give them a round of applause. And this is not where it ends, because yeah, players did point out that as far back as 2021, this was normal for the Rift, and they had the screens to prove it. Now, Geneva says that these are shots between an old Trail team member and management, and they aren't taken out of context, as you can see proof of the entire conversation from the beginning to end. You guys are claiming you've grown and changed and that the past should remain in the past. Yet I'm seeing striking similarities with slightly more accountability back then, yet still lacking transparency. The one that I am going to focus on here, you can read the screens yourselves, but I'm going to focus on one point here. Now, this is a comment from 2021, and here it goes. Communication within Rift staff has always been a problem and something that desperately needs to be worked on. There needs to be a general balance agreed upon that works, and then go from there. No matter what, every situation calls for different solutions, but having a base system does wonders. There will never be a perfect balance for stuff like this. You can read the rest, but essentially that sort of is the point here. They haven't changed. It shows the exact same type of talking, the exact same way they've always handled problems. Say something nice, be sweet, and then just kind of pretend it didn't happen. Which is exactly what they're doing right now. Now, Chelsea would respond to these screens saying that people were mad because the Rift team had given too much information in that situation about why they had demoted their trail guide. Because of that backlash, they decided to remove the original post and instead put up something more general. And then they blame the players further by saying that, ironically, after we removed the post to be more respectful, people then came to us for details, expecting the same level of transparency that others had criticized. They are subtly blaming the players for this. That is what they're doing here. They are blaming you for the fact that they had to hide things. It is your fault because you demanded information and because you were upset when they overshared. Chelsea ends it with they now prioritize privacy to protect staff and members from unnecessary drama or harassment, once again playing the victim. She further says that from the outside it might look like they have changed, but they have made a lot of adjustments. But Geneva was having none of this. They push. Was it perhaps the way it was handled rather than the demotion announcement themselves, or just did you get one account of disapproval, couldn't handle it, and then removed the original? It's not difficult to make an announcement like that with good transparency, but also a decent amount of general information that doesn't go too deep. They would hit the brakes on the conversation at this point, locking the thread. This would be around the third time they did this, and it was clearly a way to stifle conversation and keep control over what was being talked about. Because they were not allowed to talk about this outside of the thread. Yeah, they couldn't talk about this anywhere else on the Discord. This was the only place they could talk about it. And it was being shut down from time to time to stop people from talking about it. Their reasoning for that was because the moderators, answered each of the questions that were posed. But the thing is, they weren't answering any questions. So I don't really see the point of this thread. But the general chat was as silent as a ghost because no one wanted to get banned. But this is not where the story ends. Elysian would state that everyone in this chat has been respectful to the staff and that the thread got worse because of rising frustration from players. Now, this comment comes after the passive-aggressive statements. They make the very fair point that the thread is not about the video anymore. It is the players' anger manifesting. And they are scared of being banned, which is why then a lot of them are not speaking up because they don't want to lose their social circle. And then one of the moderators would screenshot a pinned message saying that it is not a debate space. It is a chance to get factual answers, not argue. Failure to follow these guidelines may result in removal from the thread or further action. If this is not the way to silence people, I actually don't know what is. Also, what factual answers? You have not given a single factual answer. Like, if I was about to ask you, is the sky blue? I'm going to bet that your answer will be, we are not comfortable answering that question. For some people, the sky is grey. But Anne would give a proper response to Elysian's original message. Here we go. We are trying to reply as best we can, I promise. I'm sorry you feel like there's been no real reply. I'm sorry you feel like there's been no reply. Like, that is manipulation 101 or apology avoidance 101. You don't actually say, I am sorry that I am not sharing. You're saying, I am sorry that you feel like I'm not sharing. Holy shit. Anyway, we've said from the beginning that we can't discuss certain topics, so there might not be a reply on those. It's basically been 3 staff members in this chat all morning, but we're also running on fumes at the moment. Okay, they haven't answered a single thing. I'm not going to read through the rest of this because it's you can read it yourself, but it's a nothing burger again. They don't answer the question. They don't care to answer the question. They do end it with, I want to reiterate that there is no risk involved as long as guidelines, boundaries, and rules are being followed.
Inconceivable! You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
We are trying to meet everyone where we are at, but also need to protect ourselves. That is your main focus, protecting yourselves. There have been no disappearing messages in this thread. In the last couple of days, we have only deleted messages that broke our rules. The only thing I will say is that we reflect on the messages we've deleted in the past when things got tense. We are humans too, and sometimes we panic. Elysian then says, Theodore. Yeah, Theodore got banned for this message. Again, God, I'm so tired of this. For the next section of this video, I'm going to be focusing on a couple of questions that were asked and answered, but I want to place emphasis on how the moderators handled these questions. Now, Celery makes a point, pointedly, specifically, asking about 2 instances. The coup with Hobo and the trail guides that got, banned and removed and all that jazz. I'm not demanding an explanation. I only have one question. Do you stand by the actions revealed in the video? And Chelsea replies, we can't give a simple yes or no answer because the video presented a biased and misleading perspective. The way certain events were framed in the video does not reflect the full truth. Hyena then says, biased and misleading implies negative intent and assumes bad faith. Again, considering 1, you were given the opportunity to be involved more directly in the creation of the original video and declined, and 2, you are asking for people's trust and faith yourself, this seems unwise. You have people willing to hear you out now in a venue you control and are choosing not to address the concerns raised. Chelsea then replies that I appreciate you sharing your perspective. When we say the video is biased and misleading, we mean that certain events were framed without full context, which led to misunderstandings. In my personal opinion, the adjusted script used to counter the copyright claim appears to be intentionally mocking the original video, which comes across as being done in bad faith, but that is my own opinion. We were given the opportunity to be involved and did provide a statement, but it wasn't included in the video. In the final video, we set boundaries around our participation, and while the creator had every right to make their content, we also have the right to correct misinformation. Hyena then says, well, when you make it impossible for someone to use your own words from your video statement by copyright striking them, I don't think it's super reasonable to then be unhappy with how they adjust the script statements in a second take. Damn! framing this the way you have been is ingenuous. I think everyone involved on both sides is doing the best they can to address what they feel is important and aligns with their own values. You don't have to agree, but if you're asking for trust and respect, it helps to give it yourself. Rather than say that other person is wrong and not elaborating, if you have additional information, by all means, share it. And then Anne says, we have shared the additional information in yesterday's announcement. Hyena then says, thank you, but I believe what Eri is referring to is not at all mentioned in the announcements. Celery then comes back in and says, would it be possible to get a yes or no answer for each of the video's claims if giving a single yes or no for the video is impossible? So again, I am strictly talking about the points brought up at the start of the video, not RedM housing, copyright, or ban of members. If these events, which have proof, are only half the truth, please provide your side or the so-called full truth so we can see it. Is it expected that members should guess their way to it, sort of hot and cold-esque? And then Chelsea says, I understand the need for clarity and I appreciate the patience. Oh, I should have had a tally for the amount of times they say thank you for your patience, or we hear your concerns, or use a little heart emoji. Like, the tally would be in the hundreds by now. However, trying to break this down into a series of yes or no answers isn't realistic. These situations are more complex than that, and there's a lot of nuance that get lost in binary answers. We've already addressed many of these concerns through announcements and discussions. If things were misrepresented or taken out of context, it's because they were framed from a perspective that didn't include the full picture. That said, this isn't a game of hot and cold. We've shared what we're comfortable with and are able to, and we're not going to go line by line debating how things were framed in the video. As for why this isn't priority number one, our priority is keeping this community a safe and compassionate space, not engaging in endless back and forth over misrepresented events. We've already put out our side where we felt it was needed, and we're not going to keep going in circles over things we've already addressed. The reason why you are going in circles is because you are not answering the questions. The reason why people are still asking the questions is because you are not answering the questions. You have been given the option multiple times to explain your side, to show proof, to prove that I was wrong, that the information that I shared was wrong, but you have not done so. You have darvoed, derailed, stonewalled, gaslit, and all other manner of ways you have shut down the conversation every time people ask you questions. Okay, I just had to get that out of my system, but it's extremely frustrating. The players in your Discord have a lot more patience than me because Celery or Cipacity says, fair enough with the binary. The examples I gave are not addressed and I haven't seen them discussed a single time. You say, I quote, if things were misrepresented or taken out of context, it's because they were framed, unquote. The thing is, we as members won't know if a thing is misrepresented or not until you show us. I respect you for not risking an endless loop of back and forth, but at the same time you use the term full truth, which makes Rift's side sound objective and something you can't argue against. Using both of these arguments is not really fair. Then Chelsea replies to both Celery, Cipacity, and Hyena, yes, we do have common sense, and yes, we do learn and grow, but if the focus remains solely on rehashing the past, it only fuels more division instead of progress. What truly matters now is how we shape this community moving forward. Constructive feedback on how we continue to build a positive, inclusive space is what will help the Rift thrive, not a crusade over past events. Let's focus on what kind of community we want to actively create together. Deny everything, admit nothing. No, we do not stand by every single decision we ever made. They answered something, sort of. Every single message we've ever deleted or every member we have ever banned. We recognize our mistakes and have learned from them. However, in almost all cases, we do stand behind the decision we made. So you're saying that you don't stand by some of your decisions, but then you say, oh, but we actually kind of do stand by our decisions. So they technically just answered it. In almost all cases, we do stand behind the decisions we made. So they do stand behind past decisions. It's technically what they're saying here. Whew. Just very briefly, then Hyena says, if there is a lot of existing trust and goodwill, people usually do not ask for a lot of transparency. Yes, they are willing to take your word for things. When things have happened to shake people's trust, they start looking at everything with a more critical eye, especially involving money. Mishandling of community interactions can translate to increased scrutiny over finances and mirrored. Being very accountable and owning up to social mistakes will often lead to people cutting you more slack for other things. This is part of why people are asking about a broad variety of past things things brought up by the video, and it's actually a very good sign that community members are asking you, because it means they're willing to believe what you tell them. If no proof would be good enough, they wouldn't ask, they'd pull their support and quit. Basically, they're giving you the chance to sort it out, so sort it out. Celery then says, honestly, I don't believe a quote-unquote no, we don't stand by our actions in the 2 examples you provided, end quote, would create more division. It sure doesn't for me. It would show a lot of positive qualities, actually. The ability to reflect, take some criticism, and most importantly, the ability to change and grow. Just answering the question would also show the entire community that you are willing to take feedback, which so many are claiming is impossible for the Rift. They then finish with, you want people to move forward, but that's asking people to believe that things will improve when they don't currently trust that to happen. You can pave that road forward yourself with accountability and transparency as much as you can, if that's truly what you want. But as others have said, just saying things will improve because we don't stand by everything is too vague to be helpful in this. Yes, like exactly that. Then Hyena comes in. Okay, if you aren't willing to litigate past decisions, which I do understand, how about this? What specifically have you learned from prior situations? What specifically will you be doing differently moving forwards? This is what accountability and change is about. Vague promises are not enough. I understand if you don't have a detailed multi-step action plan ready to present, obviously, but as recent as the video might be, a lot of the past situations are not, and you've had time to reflect before now. People really will start taking you up on your offer to leave if you can't offer anything more than things will be better in the future. Sorry, I need to stop doing that voice. And then replies to Celery. We can't outright say yes, we stand by it, or no, we don't stand by it. This is because these situations are far more complicated and nuanced than that, and giving a black or white answer will either fall us or the members in question short. And then Ren comes in with a very, very long post, so I'm not going to read everything, I'm just going to touch on a few points that I think expands on the problem. These 2 situations that you continue to refuse to address, the coup and the trail guides, are the same situations repeated, as is this ongoing issue. You've said now several times, we're human and we learn from past mistakes, but it's obvious that in each and every one of these situations you kick ban and really just drive people out. Then say there's been a situation and you're going to learn from your mistakes. But how many situations are there going to be? When are you going to stop and apologize to people you've wronged instead of shrugging it off with, oh well, we'll start over with new people and do better? Your answers aren't getting any more informative, you're saying the same thing in different words, you're not giving any actual rectifying information, and this thread honestly seems performative from a third-party perspective. Fostering an environment of fear, censorship, and self-victimization is harmful to everybody involved, and painting it under veneer of everything has to be positive and happy 24/7 is even more insidious. If you are unable to cope with the realities of running a public-facing community of this size, step back and hand it over to the people who can. If you still want to claim and steer this group of people yourself, start reflecting fast. I hope everyone can correct these mistakes, truly learn from their wrongs, and move forward into healthier forms of communication and a fresh start. And after all of that, Chelsea's response is, at the end of the day, the Rift is a space that I created, and together with my community managers and Rift managers, we have the right to maintain it in the way we believe is best for the community. While we've chosen to respond to concerns, we are not obligated to do so, nor are we going to continue rehashing past events like the Trail Team situation. If you disagree with how things are run, that is entirely your right, and you are welcome to have your own opinions. However, the Rift is a space that we work hard to cultivate, and we will continue to uphold the standards and boundaries that foster a kind and safe environment. There are many other communities out there, and if the Rift no longer aligns with what you're looking for, we respect that. You know, I am starting to think that the reason Chelsea kept Hobo around is only because she agreed with his statements. Like, I'm putting these two next to each other. Like, holy shit. Your feedback has been noted, and we are moving forward. Insidious? That sounds about right. And Ren replies, long story short, the Cabal are working behind the scenes the same way as always, and nothing will be clearly communicated on what is changing and why. Don't like it? Leave. Noted. Good luck. And then she's just gone. This is the perfect time to expand on the drip strategy that they are utilizing. The drip strategy is a way that you control the narrative, but as the name suggests, it is a systematic drip feeding of information while simultaneously shifting blame. There are 4 parts to it, which go: at first you deflect. Then you raise doubts about the credibility of the other side. When you absolutely must, you admit a little bit more but redirect the blame, and then shortly after, you backpedal to show confusion. Now, if you go back to the very early example of the copyright conversation, we can see this in action. A player asks if the video fell under fair use, why did you strike it? And then they answer, we were within our right to report the video, completely avoiding the topic of fair use. This is shifting the focus away from fair use. Then they move on. We chose not to talk to the creator. And then they vaguely say why not, because we don't agree with her content, which is again giving information but shifting the focus away from the issue and creating another problem to focus on. This of course creates doubts about my credibility. And then they just sort of loop it. They never really give information. They redirect, they change the point of attack, they move the goalposts, they twist and writhe their way out of any answer consistently, always. You will notice that the fourth step isn't there, and that is a step that they haven't taken yet. But the rest is absolutely true. They are continuously drip feeding information and continuously shifting blame. And that is how they are using the drip feed method. If we apply it to the conversations we just went through, we see it again and again and again. They don't answer, they deflect. Even more comments would pop up trying to get the staff to understand what the problem is and why they aren't happy, and the staff will not bend. They will not listen, and they will not accept that the way that they are handling the situation is absolutely horrible. I am quite literally just letting these run in the background, but they are clear signs of a community desperate to communicate with their moderators, and the moderators gaslighting and shutting down conversation at every turn. It is frustrating, it is impossible to read through. I had a hernia. But the thread would be opened again, and Chelsea would come back with a long post. But credit to them, they do try and answer something. Not exactly sure what, but it's an answer, sort of. Old members of the trail team were banned not because of the energy drink ping situation, but because they repeatedly went behind our backs, spoke poorly of multiple community members, shared privileged screenshots, didn't adhere to rules and boundaries set for our teams, and attempted to take my community away from me and force me to step down. Okay, let's get into this one. Firstly, no screens are shown, no names are given, and she turns it into that she was the victim. Again. Secondly, the boundary, as we have seen, is no point at all because they abuse the concept of a boundary. So we can just kind of scratch that whole sentence. As for privileged screens, this is an interesting one, and I will talk about this when Kitty responds. The second paragraph basically says that they needed to shut it down fast, and they did by banning people who spoke up. They then mentioned that people tried to get back at them, and one of those ways was by contacting me. I want to make it clear, I had no idea about the energy drink issue until January when people contacted me about the housing issue in the Rift. There was another person who contacted me. I did try and get information about it, but Chelsea lawyered up and refused to speak to me, so that was really that. But I do want to talk about another issue here. Chelsea is very quick to call out harassment or claim being bullied or being poorly treated by her community. Unfortunately, she has been known to not pay her people and treat them pretty badly as well. In 2021, a creator would make the logo for Chelsea. The logo was free, but Chelsea would ask for other work that should have been paid but wasn't, until recently. I'm just gonna pop up the screens here, you can read them at your leisure. In total, Sunny would ask for payment around 3 times. She would not get paid. 2 years later, Chelsea would reach out to make it right. By then, Sunny had just forgotten how much she had initially asked for the work. Sunny would leave a comment on my video, and Chelsea and Anne saw it, and they were not happy, and Anne sent her a few messages, according to Sunny, deleted them, but left one. This one. And then Chelsea would also contact her. Honestly, no words. Thanks for stabbing me in the back. I'm sorry if I ever hurt you, but I can't do this anymore either. I genuinely loved and cared for you. Regardless, wishing you all the best though, seriously. But goodbye. You made this easier now. Guess I can thank you for that. But damn, you did Hexy dirty. So anyway, sorry, I'm going to stop there because I'm just going to make it even sillier. Sunny also has another few screens showing a meltdown from Chelsea. Now, I'm not going to show this because we all get emotional and stupid sometimes. She unpacks a lot, but the main problem I have with this is really normal behavior, as we can see from the previous message. Now, the previous message is not as bad as these, but whenever Chelsea gets any sort of pushback, she always spins it to make herself the victim, has meltdowns, and sad situations. She apologizes in these meltdowns, but it's always backed up with a "but I am sad," or "I had a difficult time," or "I am really stressed." It's an "I'm sorry, but" situation. But Chelsea would finally pay Sunny, and she would give her a little message. "Here's the money you told me you didn't want for the logo."
Okay.
But let's get back to the present day for their long-winded posts end. And it ends with the classic, "We hear your concerns." Just beautiful. Now, Anne would kind of come in for the save here, saying we must make it clear that they wanted to remove Chelsea, which never came up on the screens that I had in my video, which I'm showing again, because here you can see Chelsea had been the lead in staging a coup against Hobo. Now, they might not have screens, and perhaps people had tried to wrestle the rift from Chelsea, but unfortunately, with their current track record, it comes across as just trying to garner sympathy and shift the blame to people who do not have voices in this server anymore. Chelsea, you can say what you want about them. No one can argue with you because you don't allow them to. You're not clearing it up. You are muddying the waters with assertions not proof. Once again, Darwing yourself out of the situation. Now, someone makes a very good point explaining that Hobo got a free pass for a long time, even while he was being an absolute twat as early as January. But Theodore got banned for this comment. Again, Chelsea goes on to explain that we were heavily reliant on him for a long time and that we should have addressed these issues sooner. The question is, why didn't you? If your entire point of existence is, according to you, or at least your Rift existence is, according to you, having chill vibes, why did you allow Hobo to run around for so long being an absolute asshole in the chat? One rule for the ruler, one rule for the ruled, hey? How can you not take a single piece of proper accountability? And not account pity, where you can just say what you did wrong with a sad face, but actual accountability. But it doesn't end there. And then Geneva comes in because she was getting frustrated. Politely, can you guys please make up your minds? First it's, please discuss and relay your worries here. We want to be open, honest, and help smooth out your concerns. Yet as soon as the community asks for clarification about the important topics, it's an instant no. Straight up avoidance and excuses, lack of proof, etc. Sarah would agree. They then use the sensitive information angle to avoid answering questions again. A few other people share their thoughts, but Geneva ain't having none of this. No. I would give you understanding if you would give more to your community first. But then the absolute best comment, or worst comment, depending on how you look at it, from Chelsea drops. We hear you, I promise. And I also promise that this is an ongoing conversation and hot topic within staff at the moment. I would also like to ask genuinely if people can see how much we've already shared and how much feedback we've taken within this post. We understand that you can't see tickets where feedback has been discussed and received. We're just talking about this post right now. Again, this is a genuine question, since from our perspective, we already have all of the information on the things we've shared, and maybe we're somehow unable to bridge that gap. You have made assertions, you have given opinions, made excuses, avoid accountability, shoved the responsibility of these problems onto your players. You have set boundaries. You have gaslit your players, but you have not answered a single question. By saying that you answered anything when you have answered nothing, you are gaslighting your players. We have gone through all of these, and I'm going to show every single part of this discussion at the end of the video, so that people can see that I am not lying, I am not making this up. Full transparency, as your players are begging you to do. The next couple of comments just reiterate they are tired of the runaround, tired of the consistent back and forths with nothing being given. A few people also point out that they got tired of the chill vibes, which actively stifled any sort of discussion. Like, I just have to point out the amount of patience these players have deserves an award. And this is a normal reaction for a lot of players in these discords. They just accept, eat the shit and accept. Like, I'm not against the players at all, but it's like, I feel so bad for them, because being in that situation where you can get cut off from your social circle is very, very stressful. It's very stressful. Now, Chelsea admits that the chill vibes can feel stifling and possibly shut down conversation, and she also says they will consider grandfathering in those players that lost homes. Yeah, they will now consider to grandfather in the players who lost homes, which is rich because a lot of the players left as a result of this. If you want to grandfather them in now, then you gotta contact them, give the houses back, the damage is done, the bullet is through the church, you're closing the gate after the horse bolted. This is putting a bandage on a bone you broke. I don't know what you're attempting here, because we all know you're not gonna do that. You're just saying that. Oh, I believe you're not gonna do that. My opinion, just gonna throw that out there. But then Source, another moderator, waltzes in and saying that because every detail is being scrutinized, they don't feel comfortable with sharing certain information. Unfortunately, we've seen instances where people have gone out of their way to assume bad intention when there aren't any. Like copyright striking a video. That kind of invasive scrutiny feels incredibly violating, and that's why we've decided to set clear boundaries on this topic. Ding 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 ding, pushing the reason for why we don't get information onto us, because it's all our fault, because we're the problem. Isn't that lovely? The next comments tell the devs that if they keep putting down boundaries and don't answer questions, then how do they want anyone to believe anything they say when they won't actually answer questions? A no comment would have been a better response. Then Katie says that she's leaving. Then Geneva says that she's leaving. Then Capacity comes in. This is her final plea to leadership. She says that the Rift still has a chance to explain, to be transparent, but that window is closing fast. She mentions the patterns, the repetitive non-apologies. We understand, but their failure to address any of the concerns raised in the thread and their continued sort of shutting down of players. The community's trust has essentially deteriorated to the point where even new members recognize the problems. That they are shutting down critics, using boundaries as a shield to cut off any potential open discussion about any of the problems, and citing misinformation without getting any proof. And then the Rift responds. Thank you for your continued effort to make us see your side. As with everything in this post, we will take your feedback into consideration. How we hope the community will be able to move forward is people who are currently distrustful starting to trust us again. We're not saying we want this forgotten. I think we can fairly confidently say we will not. We are working on everything that we have heard from our community, everyone who has put in the effort to ask us questions and give us their 2 cents. We will sit with this for a bit and consider how to approach this further. At this point in time, they're gaslighting themselves. I cannot think of another way how they're doing this. Now, at one point during the thread, a user would suggest a Google form for players to fill out to let players give a more structured way. Really, dog? To give players a more structured way of giving feedback. Now, I'm going to make this clear. I do not blame the player for making this suggestion. I think they were really trying to help out and make things easier. Unfortunately, this suggestion gave a very easy out for the mods to kind of slip out of this thread, because they jumped on this, they shut down the entire thread, left a link for the players to use for the Google form, and since then, they have done basically nothing, which is sadly where the story ends. One user would ask if anything was still happening with this forum, if they were going to do anything else, and the rest would give a very long version of essentially, yeah, and then they would make announcements about other shit and updates like nothing ever happened. They have effectively shut down the conversation by creating the ultimate ticket. But now we can sort of end the video, and I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. To the Rift team, I have this to say. Throughout this entire situation, you have had multiple chances to address the concerns from your players. They have given you not one, not two, but dozens of chances to answer the questions posed. But instead of being honest and open as you claim you are, as you claim you were, you instead chose copyright strikes, gaslighting, shutting down conversations, and abusing boundaries to prevent players from digging too deep. You preach the word chill vibes and safe space, yet you are quick to ban people who question you. I don't see a safe space, nor do I see chill vibes. I only see desperate players and a mod team that refuses to take accountability. You have essentially proven why horse game discords are in the state that they are, because these teams cannot handle criticism. They cannot accept that sometimes they are wrong. They cannot accept that sometimes they have to apologize. It is not the end of the world to admit fault, but it becomes the end of the world when you are unwilling to bend, when you are so determined to stay on your high horse that you would rather hold on to it with every fiber of your being, even as it runs off a cliff. We can throw out terms like narcissist, arrogance, egocentric, or even just bitter. But the tragedy is that it's not you that suffers. It is the players who lost their homes in the game, the players who got shut out of their communities, the players who were demonized for trying to ask you questions. Those are the people who got hurt, and you orchestrated it without batting an eye. The Rift could have been a wonderful community. Instead, it's now a cautionary tale, etched into Discord logs and paid for by players.